I always get the first wave.
Pretty much, it brought me to tears. Like the wave was so good.
That's the biggest drop I've ever taken in my life.
And so right there, I told myself I needed to just relax and stay calm. That I'm stronger than this.
My man, Bob Pearson. How are you, mate?
Good. You?
I'm good. Considering everything, it's Hawaii's been a good place to be. So we're stoked. You know, kids are able to go to the beach, and we're able to go surf and all those simple things in life. So it's been good.
We can see the sun today. That's good because we haven't been able to see the sun or blue sky.
Yeah, I was about to say it looks pretty bright for Santa Cruz right now. It's like
beautiful.
That's awesome. You guys have had a slow summer, but for waves.
I think it's the worst I've ever seen. And I've seen it for quite a few years. 55 years or something. So yeah, I couldn't believe how poor the summer was.
Wow.
With the COVID and the fires. Wow.
Yeah. Rough times, huh? Rough times for the whole world, it seems like. But so speaking on that 55 years, Bob, I'd like to let's time travel back all those years. Were you born in around the Northern California, Santa Cruz area, or did you end up there? How did that all?
About 45 minutes over the hill from here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where was that?
Castro Valley.
Oh, okay, cool.
Not in Cuba, but just right over there.
Yeah. And then, so how did your journey start for surfing? Like, were you stuck over the hill for a certain amount of years? Did your parents end up moving closer to the beach, or?
Came to the beach a lot. We were here in Santa Cruz a lot. But my older brother, he got into surfing and took me surfing when I was 14 years old.
So your brother took you. You were 14. That's sort of late in the scheme of things, right? Like starting off at 14.
Well, how good surfing is, it's way late. It's about 13 years too late. But relatively speaking, some guys are just starting when they're 40, 50, 60, and I've had a lot of good surfing years, and yes, it was late. I wish I could have started sooner, but I was kind of living over the hill, and it kind of got in the way. So, but soon as I started surfing, I just fell in love with it, and I wanted to do it all the time.
Yeah, so you're 14. You're right in the middle of, I'm guessing, high school there. So were you playing other sports? You're a pretty athletic guy, So imagine you're playing football and all sorts of stuff. Did surfing sort of just blow everything out of the water, or did you continue to dabble in all the other sports? Or
I played all the sports, but mainly I was a swimmer, and I was a member of the AAU, Amateur Athletic Union, and our coach was Coach Krogan. And he's world famous for being a driver. And we were swimming 2 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the evening, 7 miles a day.
Wow.
And that was 6 days a week. He wanted to turn us all into Olympians, and he was aggressive.
Yeah.
So we all learned how to swim real good.
That's old school style training, where they figured that the more you did, the better you would be. But I think we'll put it this way. It's a great base. I think swimming is, and I've said it many times, I think swimming is one of the best bases you can have for surfing. It's a very similar stroke to your paddle stroke.
Yeah.
The way that you're able to breathe and control breathing under duress, I think it's just a really good, if you've swum a lot as a kid and then you start surfing and you're a really good surfer, I think it's such a good base to have. But
paddling wasn't an issue, and the water wasn't an issue. Holding your breath wasn't an issue at all. So, and that's a lot of it, So, my ability of swimming and everything enabled me to get a lot of waves. Yeah, make up because I started when I was 14.
Still probably does now.
Oh yeah. Well, I quit swimming out of high school, and in college I started playing water polo.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. So.
Well, and water polo's, again, speaking of something that's good for big waves, would be getting banged up and pulled underwater and kicked and scratched and holding your breath.
Yeah.
Water polo, I think people sleep on water polo, like how gnarly that sport is. It's a rough sport.
Yes, I played in Australia for a few years, and it was really rough over there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, terrible.
Damn
It was,
Aussies, man.
It kind of took the fun away. You
Yeah.
start out playing water polo, then it would be a big fight, kind of like a hockey game. You go to a hockey game and a fight breaks out. Same as water polo.
Yeah. So Bob, growing, so you're in high school, you're falling in love with surfing. Then, is there any what's the progress from say when you start to you finished high school? So you're coming out of high school. Is there any thought about shaping at this stage or building boards, or are you just trying to be a better surfer? Have you started to do contests at that stage? What's the mindset from that 14 to sort of when you're about to leave high school and have to sort of realize what am I going to do?
Into surfing, and after the first day, I couldn't get enough, and I wanted more. I was so passionate about it. I just wanted to be in the water all the time on a board, and I was thinking about it, drawing pictures of it, designing boards, figuring out what I wanted. And after about maybe when I was 15 and a half, I designed a board. I wrote a bunch of my friends' boards. We're all longboards at the time. And one friend had a round pin, another guy had a square tail, another guy had a shorter board that was like 9.8. Some were 10 foot. And, the shortest boards were like 9.6. And just different thicknesses and rockers and rails and everything and fin placements. And I was curious how they work. So I wrote my friends' boards and wrote everything and jotted it down on pages and figured out what I liked and wanted. And I took about 12 pages to a local shaper. And I said, excited, this is what I want. I know this is what I want. I wrote it and I took the best of all the boards. And that's it. He laughed at me, disrespected me, and said, this is ridiculous. I'm the shaper. I know what I'm doing. And I was pretty young and unaggressive at the time and respectful. So I said, okay. And he shaped me a board. And I remember taking out pleasure points before leashes. It was about an 8 to 10 foot day, a little higher tide. And I wrote it, and I didn't like it. And I wrote it, didn't like it. And I was going to give it a fair go. After a couple hours, I go, this is terrible. It doesn't work. I don't like it. Big wave came, and I wiped out. Went in the rocks, got destroyed. And at that time, I didn't have a lot of money. And so it was a big issue to me, too. And I knew what I wanted. So I scraped some money together again and got a blank and started shaping. And my first board took me like 2 weeks to shape. And I was doing like 6, 7, 8 hours a day and scratch a little off and calipering, scratch a little off and measuring. And I didn't know what I'd do. And I didn't want to take off too much too fast. So I just kept slowly bringing it down. And that board came out exactly like my plans. I had all these plans and calipered every foot. I had, the thickness I want, the rails I want. I had the rail curves. I had all this, the rockers. And then it took me a long time to glass it because I didn't know how to glass it. And finally I got in the water and it ripped. It surfed just like I hoped it would.
Yeah.
So my friend got one and his friend got one. And next thing you know, I was busy making boards, And the same time I was going to college, I went to a junior college over the hill and I got my associate arts degree. Then my Bachelor of Science degree in biology and physical education. Then I got my California teaching credential. Then Australia called me and wanted me to come over there and teach.
Yeah,
So
I remember you telling me that story. It was like 1973, I think you said you moved to Australia, right?
Yeah, and I lived in Torquay and surfed Bells Beach and took my students surfing for PE. It was great. Loved it.
And were you able to continue on? Did you? Because obviously Bells Beach, Torquay is a huge, a lot of history, obviously down there, and some guys like Maurice Cole, great shaper, out of down that way. Did you run into that sort of guys down there? Were you able to continue on maybe shaping down there, or you just having a good time? You're surfing, you're working.
Santa Cruz has great waves, and I had a hard time going to Australia, but I always wanted to surf Bells. I've seen the photos of it and see Australia, and I had a great opportunity. They paid my way down there and took care of me. And Santa Cruz has a really hardcore surfing image and culture. And I moved to Torquay, and it felt just like Santa Cruz. The water, the waves, the people. Claw and Sing Ding were just making Rip Curl, just organizing that, and Greeny was just getting Quicksilver together, and Billabong was started, and Maurice Call was there, and Strapper, and Donnie Allcroft, and all the boys, and we're out there surfing, and the culture was amazing. And previous to that too, before I went to Australia, I was doing a lot of competition, moving up, started at 1A, 2A, 3A, became a 4A surfer, which was like a pro surfer. And then in Australia, the professional surfing organizations just started getting going. And I started showing interest in that and getting involved in that a bit, and surfed some contests then. I was there a little over 2 years. I established residency there, and realized if I don't move out of here quick, I'm going to stay forever. I loved Australia. Loved it.
No wonder I like you so much. I knew there was a reason I liked you so much.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful. But I realized I wasn't ready to settle down, so I moved to Hawaii for a little bit, and then got more into competitive surfing and the pro circuit and making boards, and came back home and opened up the surf shop in 1976, Arrow store.
Yeah, is that the same? Is that the same location it's still on now, or have you moved a bunch?
Yeah, same location.
Wow.
I've had factories all over town though.
Yeah, you've had I know that the factories, but the actual store, the retail store, is the same. Is in the same location as in 1976.
Yeah, same location.
Wow.
We started out the wall and blew out the walls, and blew out this wall and blew out that wall. We kept blowing out the walls and increasing the size. But yeah.
Wow, that's incredible to have a. Well, I was born in '77, so that's a year before I was born. So that's been there for 45 years. That's incredible.
Yeah, back then, surfing, Santa Cruz was unbelievable, as Torquay was. And at the time, we were surfing contests. We went against, Simon Anderson, and 1976. I got invited to Stubby's, the pro, and Michael Peterson won that one. And Simon Anderson just came out with the tri-fin and introduced that, and Cheyne Horan. Yeah. One of the best surfers I've ever seen. Amazing surfer. Just so talented.
Yeah, that was interesting, Cheyne. There's a lot of, they're just saying if he had just gotten off his kill fin, which he was so, I guess people would say, stubbornly wanting to prove that was to work. But I think he was runner-up 4 times, in the world title. I think probably every year to MR maybe, but yeah, they were saying that if he gotten off the keel fin, that he may have won a few. But I mean, that's just that's everyone's opinion, right? So
yeah, Mark Richards and Peterson and all the guys. Peter Townend was surfing, and Ian Cans and all the guys, and I don't know. The bronze Aussies, they grabbed Cheyne Horan. I thought that was the most brilliant move they ever did. At that first stubbies they had, Cheyne was just, what he was doing out in the water was above everybody else. I couldn't believe what he was doing.
Yeah. That's funny too, because Cheyne ended up being a big wave surfer. He loved towing in. He went to Jaws, and he chased a bunch of swells. Because he lives on the Gold Coast, right, where I was growing up too. So he was. I'd see photos of him towing in at Jaws, and I was like, wow, okay, this guy's and I think I don't even know. I think he was maybe even still riding the keel fin on the toe boards. I wouldn't surprise me, man. He's an interesting character. He's interesting. I used to run into him a fair bit back home, but what a time to grow up as a surfer. Like you said. It seems very similar, like Santa Cruz, and now I think about Bells, the water temperature, a lot of right-hand point breaks, the characters, and the culture. It's a very, very similar vibe, and it's no wonder that it felt sort of like home to you when you were there.
It was home, and I was over there 510 days. I established residency, and then it was basically I emigrated over there. I love this place. I'm staying. Yeah. It started scaring me though, and I wasn't ready to settle down. So.
What was it like? What was it like growing up in Santa Cruz, Bob, back in the 70s, and compared to now, we know what the differences are. But was it when you were shaping a bunch of those boards? I mean, it's still to this day when if I'm just hanging out with you and we go down to the lane to go surf, it still seems like long. I see your boards everywhere, obviously, but long boards. Is that? I see a lot of longboard surfers in Santa Cruz, a lot of Arrows longboards. Was that when you guys were growing up, was that sort of when you were saying those 9'6" boards? Was it more just sort of like longboard style, bigger boards?
When I started surfing in the early 60s there, it was all longboards. And I was one of the first guys to get a short board. And I call it a mini longboard, and it had a name of a mini longboard. It was short board. It was an 8'6", and everybody thought it was way small. Like Wayne Lynch and Nat Young started dropping in those little small boards, and they were 8 foot, 7'6". Those, it was like those. And I remember jumping on the 8'6", and people look at me and go, "That's weird. That's so small. What are you writing that thing for?" And they didn't appreciate or dig it, nor I got an attitude here and there because it was deviated from the norm.
Yeah.
And then quickly we moved down to 7'6", 7 footers, 6'6". So we moved all the way down to about 5'10s, and then everybody was on a 5'10. I remember for a while there, everyone was on like 8'6", and everyone was on a 7'6". Didn't matter the weight. All single fins. Everything looked the same. Everyone was surfing the same, no matter what your weight where it was. And it was, if he ripped on a 7'6", must be the right size. Let's get a 7'6". So everybody got the 7'6", regardless. And then I remember dropping down to, once we got down to 5'10s, some of the people didn't have the paddle power, wave catching ability, and so they started going back up again. But we're on short boards real fast.
Yeah.
I remember in 73, I think I was riding single fins like everybody else. Then 74, 75, Simon came out with a tri-fin. I threw those on. From that day, I realized, hey, this is open. I can try a lot of different things. So I started trying all different size fins, different placements, and everything. So.
Yeah. I know you're really, I know firsthand, when I stay with you and we go over the boards that I'm going to use, like when you're talking about all the little details in the books, we have all those details for my board as well. So I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I wonder, when was like surfing, you shaping your own boards, you're going through the thruster transition, and there's some big waves around Santa Cruz. Middle Peak gets big, and obviously all the spots that we can't name along the way. But when did you guys? When would you say you first shaped a board that was really designed for big waves? Like your first go at a big wave gun, and what? How did you get to that point? Was it someone came along and said, "Hey, I want to shape something different than, say, a longboard or whatever it was you guys were using." If steam lane and middles was like 10, 12 feet, I'm wondering when that transition was like, hey, we're specifically going to try something for a big wave here.
When I said that my first board I ever shaped, I rode 20 different boards, and I had the fact sheet on, and I tried to analyze why those boards performed the way they did. And those narrower tails, those rounded pins, work better in bigger waves. And it's kind of physics. It's obvious why you get the performance of that. Big wide tails, they plane too much. It's hard to get from rail to rail. They sit on the top of the water too much. Rounded pins turn tighter, quicker, easier. They sit in the water better. In bigger waves, you're going faster. So we want to hold in, so you put that round pin on. And I noticed that a narrower tail, it gives you more control and better turns in big waves at higher speeds. And I've water skied, and we'd have when you're going faster and bump, you'd get a narrower ski. Oh, yeah, okay, so you're not bouncing as much. It was obvious, and so much of the design, basic hydrodynamics, it's obvious what you need to do. And so, in the very beginning, I knew if I was going to be riding big waves, I'd shape something with a narrower tail, put a round pin on it. In the beginning. And here in Santa Cruz, we got a lot of big waves. We got good waves here, and we got a lot of riders here who rip big waves. And a lot of these guys are on my boards, and they're giving me feedback, and we're talking redesigning. And I'm so passionate about it. let's get in the shaping room. Let's design this. Try this. Get rid of this. What's the feedback? What's that? And we're all working together, improving designs and stuff like that. And so very soon, to answer your question, I would say by 76, 73, we had a lot of big wave boards going, designed for big waves. A little something faster so you can paddle in, get in a little earlier. You know, the longer shape paddles you in, gets you in. Big wave riding, it's all about getting in, mainly. Yeah. And so you get something as you get in. All right, once you're in, now how do you handle these high speeds, all the power, put a narrower tail on it? You know, put a bigger fin, put it farther back, whatever you got to do. Put more V in it to slow the thing to get in control, or whatever you know, so many things to do that. And so at 73, 74, 75, 76, we had quivers. We had quivers, 12, 13 boards in it. The first board I ever got, I thought it was going to be my board for life. I go, this is it, my board. I love this. This is it for life. I thought we all did.
Yeah.
Back then, about every 2 years, we'd get another board. Then it turned in about every year. Then it turned every 6 months. And then it got ridiculous where we always had a board being shaped going through the new one, turn them over, you know. And like today, it's, you know, everybody's turning them over quick and designing their boards and having a quiver. At one point, I had probably about 98 boards in a quiver, and I wrote them all. Single fins, twin fins, tri-fins, quads, 5 fins, you know, for big waves and everything. And that was way early. And, you know, filled up the garage. But
real fast, yeah.
So we had the big waves here that we could test them on and go ride them on where we needed them if we wanted to go big wave surfing. In the early days, though, a lot of guys didn't like big waves, round waves, hollow waves. It was all about nose riding and hanging 10 and putting your hands in your pockets and posing, you know. And some of the guys, we wanted to venture out into the bigger surf, and we got into enjoying that. And we realized what we were riding wasn't working, so we needed to improve the shapes.
Yeah, because it's Santa Cruz has such a rich history in not just surfing, but you know, like I look back and I always say these names, but you know, you look back at, you know, like Pete, Flea, you know, Barney, Skinny, like Rapogal, and I mean, there's just so many guys, and they ripped short waves, but they also like they're the guys that actually started pushing Tassies, and then all of a sudden started pushing waves. Nick Lamb up at Mavericks now, you know, and so I'm wondering when like it went from sort of like the older school style to when, you know, Mavericks burst onto the scene, right? Like obviously Mavericks burst on the scene, and I'd like to touch on. I know Jay Moriarty was you had a great relationship with him, and obviously he was an amazing surfer, longboarder, and waterman, and then he started to go up and charge Maverick. So I'm wondering when you would say the modern style gun came into play, and who are the guys that come to you first and were like, hey, we're going to go to Mavericks, you know, like we need boards for Mavericks. Like who was that crew and how did that come about?
You named them all, you know, Skinny and Flea. Flea won Mavericks like 3 years in a row, and Flea, Skinny, Tazzy, Barney, all the boys, you know, and Jay Moriarty. They were one of the first guys, a few of the first guys to go up there and start doing it on a regular basis. You know, there was guys surfing Mavericks years ago. It was only this guy, that guy, and occasionally going out there. So it wasn't a place that was surfed a lot, or someone would wait to go surf Mavericks. But at one point, it became real popular, and everybody was going up there and looking for it. From that day on, it was Mavericks. Everybody knew about it. And the boards that we were, you know, for years, everybody shaped, you know, you had the Rhino Chasers, and those Rhino Chasers were long and narrow and heavy, a lot of nose kick, flat tail kick. And all the shapers in the world were doing those over and over and over again, kind of copying each other. And the big wave riders were considered to having success and loving it and doing it. And so everybody was shaping those, including me. But as we progressed and wanted to get more performance out of it, wanted to ride bigger waves, better, it dictated that we improve the shapes. And so for 40 years, everyone was kind of doing the same thing and making very subtle improvements. But all of a sudden, maybe 10, 15 years ago, dramatic changes happened with changes in the whole shapes, from rocker to thickness to foils to bottom contours, fins, fin placements, and everything. And I think people today are surfing big waves better, way better than they ever were years ago. Way better. They're getting deeper with control, and it's just not a drop in and survival stance and aim, make the wave, cut down. And I wrote it, I made it. It's guys, all right, I'm going to take off this thing late, I'm going to fade, I'm going to slice in here, I'm going to go up and go down, I'm going to cut back, stall it. And what guys are doing big waves now is amazing because of the current designs, the shapes that enable that.
Yeah. I mean, I know that you love. I mean, as you said earlier, you were 14, and by the time you were 15, you were shaping your first board. That obviously you had a mind and a love for shaping, or just for designing and thinking outside the box. And I know with your designs now, when those first boards you were making, when Jay and that were surfing and Tassie and stuff, because like your boards now are a lot different. The boards that I have from you, lower rocker entry, we're been using epoxy, so they're generally a lot lighter than most other boards. The tail, they're thinned out, and so they're a lot different looking boards than most. But what was going from the original sort of like you said, rhino chasers, like when did you start to go, hey, I'm gonna go away from this rocker, I'm gonna make my nose entry lower, and I'm gonna do this to the rails, and I'm gonna go even start making these boards epoxy, and because a lot of people must have tripped out, because they still trip out now as well. So I'm wondering, was it someone specific that come to you and said, hey, we drastically want to change this, or was it?
Yeah. Come around in the 80s, I realized that, hey, we got to start changing these shapes because these aren't quite working quite right. We can improve these things. But I remember suggesting things and designing things and trying to get some of my writers and, from Hawaii, from here, Australia, everywhere to change. And they're looking at me and go, these are big waves. These are serious waves. I can't be testing something that I'm going to get hurt on. Everybody's writing this. It's got to be right. And that was the general thought process. And so, I mean, I remember the big change. I remember when Jay was around, dropping his entry lower and kicking the tail a bit, and then making his board a little lighter, and just doing several other things to the board. And he just had a board, and he got the new one, and he liked it better. And I go, that's because we did this. Let's do it on the next one. On the next one, we drop another eighth inch. A couple months later, another eighth inch, just creeping into it slowly. And Jay was open-minded and found success in it and doing it. So are a bunch of the other guys. Flea, when three-time winner at Mavericks. But I think the guy that changed it most dramatically is, at this time, I'm pretty upset at the guys going, hey, we're explaining designs and rockers and theories and what's going on. And I go, because everybody's doing this doesn't make it right. You ought to try this. And I explain why, the different various reasons. No matter what you do to a board, there's a positive and a negative. I can name a lot of positive reasons why to do this, a lot of negative reasons as a result of that. But if you have 3 negative reasons why what will happen, cause effects of what will happen, and a dozen positive, that kind of outweighs it. Hey, well, here's the negative thing. The positive, what's important in those positive things? What's most important? All right, better wave entry, early wave entry, control at higher speeds, yada, yada. And so with a little more attitude, a little more aggressive, I started twisting these guys' arms and get them to do it. And I remember one day, Skindog said, do it, let's go. And I looked at him, and so the average rocker in the nose on a good big wave board was like 7 5/8, 7 3/4. That was normal. And the average tail was 2 7/8. And through the years, made a lot of different boards, and I even know what the normal rocker was in this for this size weight, this size weight, this size weight, this size weight, what the 80 percentile like. They like this, they like this, they like this. And everybody's creeping into it. And Skindog, he goes, "Where do you think I would be, Bob?" And I go, "I'd be 2 inches less than that." And he goes, "Do it." And I looked at him like, and I go, "Geez, fantastic." And what about the tail? Do it. And so we did it. And he took a board up there at Mavericks, and he was laughed at until he caught the waves and rode the waves. And I got phone calls going, "Bob, I really don't like what Skinny's riding and what he's doing, but I see some advantages of it, so maybe we can do some of that on my next board." And I go, "Good idea, some of it." Mike Gerhardt, he brought a board over from Hawaii. He said, "I love this board, clone it." So we cloned his first year. The second year, I suggested this and that. Okay, do an 8/8. Next year, an 8/8. Next year, an 8/8. Next year, an 8. 8 years later, every board gets better and better and better. And Mike's going, "I cannot believe I didn't let you do that. I could have been surfing so much better 10 years ago." Because it took me years and years to get to that. But also the confidence in that and the design and understanding. It's not so important to follow everybody. It's be open-minded and understand what works. Think about what works. Think about hydrodynamics. Think of what you need to do, the cause effects of the different designs, and design the board that. For each individual, what do you want this board to do better? That 7.5 on a big wave, that's kind of flat. It's a big wave. And a little wave, it's hard to fit a 10-foot board in that, a little 6-foot wave. It doesn't fit. When you want a 20, 30-foot wave, this is flat. And when you're dropping, there's so much wind coming up the face just because of the wave, let alone the windy conditions. And when you got a lot of wind coming up the face, if you kick the nose like this, the wind stops you. And go 25 miles an hour in your car, put your little hand out the window, and you really feel it push back. So when you're trying to drop in a wave and you got this big nose up there kiting on you, you got a kite. I was with surfing Bud Miller one day at Sunset, and Bud took off way late, got this, and he went like this and landed on the backside. And that's how much wind's stopping you. And you want to penetrate, you want to go down. So the way to do that is get rid of your kite and lower the rocker. Plus, now you're utilizing the length of the board. A 9-foot board doesn't paddle as fast as a 10-foot board. The 10-foot board paddles faster. And so if you're lowering your entry, now you're utilizing your length of the board. So now you're getting better wave entry because it's a longer board. You're not kiting as less. The problem is you start hitting bump with this. But if you put like a displacement hull up there, it makes it wave forgiving. And then if you kick the tail up a lot more, these boards, when we were running those Rhino chasers, we made the wave and they were fast, but we couldn't turn. We didn't have a lot of control. And we kicked the tail up way more than they were. So we took 2 inches out of the nose and put 2 inches on the tail. So it's the same overall rocker. And so all this tail kick enabled the board to go like that if you needed it with all that tail kick. And all that tail kick inherently likes to turn tight at the top. In a big wave, ideally you'd like to turn top and get going on that. And all that tail kick does that. But you have to do the tail kick right. You can't have like a parabolic curve ever increasing and going into flat. It's got to be right for drive and everything.
Yeah. I think it's really key that you have that surfboard, the shaper surfer relationship, is really important because you can have like one either side. You can have a surfer that's really open and a shaper was going to do his own thing, and you can have it vice versa where you want the shaper's really open to try stuff and the surfer's a little bit closed-minded. But when you get the two together that are willing to do that and really really test it, and from my when I look at memory as well, I know Tassie's younger than those guys, but I'm thinking Tassie was one of those guys too, because especially he tried the twin fin out at Mavs, and Tassie's such a interesting character, and he has that mind of like tinkering and inventing and trying to do that. So I'm guessing you had some fun with Tassie as well, like with his boards.
Oh, Tassie's awesome. He's just so awesome. He's such a great human being. And just go surfing with you, have fun. He's just passionate about everything, passionate about design. We have a shaping design session. And we're both just caught up into this excitement of design. Yes, let's do this. I remember that twin fin he rode in that contest out at Maverick. It was 60 foot, and everybody's pretty scared and heavy and concerned and hesitant. And Taz says right before the heat, he goes, "I'm going to paddle out farther out than anybody, get deeper than anybody, and I'm going to kick the hell out of that wave. I'm going to rip it apart. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to show everybody my twin fin." And he did it. And I remember coming in, everyone wanted to check what he was riding. Everyone saw the twin fin, then went, yeah, open-minded. We got there.
Yeah. Speaking. I mean, I think another part of design, huge part of design, is obviously fins. And I know that you're super open on the fin thing, and with me working with you has made me even more open. I mean, I surfed the twin fin at Sunset a lot last year. I haven't progressed to giant waves yet on the twin, but I'm definitely think on the right day I'm gonna give it a go. But even just with the thrusters, the quads, and girls like Emmy Erickson, she still rides the single fin. So every board has its moments, and every fin set up. But I'd like to dive into the fins and what like obviously in big wave surfing. The futures setup is by far the most popular. The boxes, play themselves to being solid and not ripping out at high speeds. So I mean, it's and then really, we looked at when I started surfing big waves, it was, which is not that long ago really, but I mean it was a 2+1 glass-ons. You had your two side fins and then your big trailing fins, and then I realized really fast that I felt like when I'd get to the bottom of the wave at max speed, it would just stop. The trailing fin was just too much area, and you'd nearly like go over the handlebars. So it went from that to thrusters, and then obviously quads seem to take over and probably seem to be the most popular setup right now. If I had to guess, I would say the quad fins are the most, just purely based on speed, but I'd like get your take on the evolution of the fins. And I know like up in Santa Cruz with Stretch as well, I know like Stretch was right into the quads and Nathan Fletcher way back then, but like what's your take on the evolution of the fins? And I mean even like fin placement, the where the fins are placed and all that sort of stuff, it makes a huge difference and can change a board to a completely different board just from going from thruster to a quad.
Everything you do, there's a positive and a negative. And the main thing first is you got to shape the right board for each individual, for who they are, for what size wave they're riding, and what performance they want to do, and their ability. And if you shape the right board for each guy, and that's the magic board, now you got to get the right fins in the right place, the magic fin placement, the right magic fin base depth, everything else. And where is that? And it changes. It changes on mood, on people, the size of the wave you got. If you're in an 8-foot glassy day, and next day you got chatter on the surface, it's an 8-foot little bumpier day, but chatter, your board's sitting on top of the water more. If it's sitting on top of the water more, it's more apt to slide out. A little more control is a good thing. So you start adding control. Control, you can go with bigger fin, a little farther back, a little more rake. You want to turn tighter, you got a rake fin. A rake fin, nose, tail. A rake fin is faster. If I say I make a board thicker, it's going to float better. This is a fact. There's a lot of things that aren't facts, like yellow is better. That's an opinion.
Yeah.
But a rake fin is fast. A pivot fin that stands up straight turns tighter. Which one's better? Well, if you're in a line-up wave, you want to go fast, this would be better, a fast fin. You want to improve your turning, you put this on. If you have a board that doesn't turn really good, probably a pivot fin would work better. If your fin's sliding out, slide it back. The thickness of the fin, the thicker the fin, the more drag. The thinner the fin, the faster there is. You want to go faster. Flats on the inside are faster than a full foil. If you want control, full foil is good. This gives you control. Take that off, water passes through this faster, your board's faster now. More driving. So if you want more drive, you don't have a board that doesn't have good drive, you'd probably flatter fins. A rake fin would be better to try to achieve the drive. But ideally, you want to get the right board. And as a generalization, if you take the twin fins have a image of being for small waves. Yes, if you put a big wide fishy tail on it, you take little fins, you move them way back, and you point them in each other and tilt them way out. Sure, they're for small waves. But if you put we have giant twin fins. We have big fins. We put them way back. We put them way over on the rail. So it's a big fin to push against to hold in, so you get more drive. But if you want to know what the basic difference is assuming the board, everything is the same. And what's the difference between the single, the twin, the quad, everything? The twin fin is the fastest, loosest, driviest. I didn't say the best. The most control is the tri-fin. That gives more control. And then the quad is somewhat right in the middle of those. And when you have a fin here, and you start separating them, it causes your board to track more. You put it together, it pivots a lot easier. And so if a guy is really a good surfer and he wants more drive, speed, tighter turn, a twin fin is a good way to go. If a guy is cold, tired, fatigued, lazy, or his style dictates a lot of control, a tri-fin is good control. And so there it is. And as the waves change what you want to do, people should be putting different fins in. You front up to the beach, you look at it and you go, geez, I thought it was going to be 4 foot today. It's 10 foot. You put your fin in that you've already tested that works better in the 10-foot waves. And the majority of guys will go a little bit bigger fin for bigger waves. Some guys like a smaller fin for bigger waves. But it's kind of like you got to dial yourself in for your style VO.
Yeah, I think it's such a because the consequences are so much more dire when you're surfing a big wave with your fins, right? So it's sort of like, I think that's why people are more hesitant to try, obviously, but there's ways to do that of working yourself up, step by step on bigger waves. But it's, and I mean, even I've learned from you, even like the cants, of the fins as well, how upright they are to the cant outwards, like the degrees out, all that stuff too makes such a big difference.
It's major. You want a board that you're going to rate a 10. You got to work on every aspect of it. That point is amazing. In the world, a few years back, 7.5 degrees was kind of normal, 7.5. And in my opinion, if the world tested properly, which most people don't do, if they tested properly, then they'd be on 2.5 degrees, 2.5, not 7.5. And the cause effect of it is enormous. It's amazing, the cause effect. I've proven to several guys, but you can't ride one board with the fins here and another board with the fins here, or go out and test this fin one day and this fin another day. It's got to be the same session, same tide. You got to be in the same fatigue level, cold, stiff, whatever it is, right? You got to test properly. And if people test properly, the advantage of a 2.5 versus this is once you get aboard of a rail, it's pretty insignificant, relatively speaking. But you're veiling right here. If you if you take a 7.5 degree and you go surf it for 3, 4, 5, 6 waves, then you try this. Right here, you have way more control. As soon as you stand up on board, you feel the fins. As soon as you feel the fins, you start driving, you start pushing. And it's kind of what we do. We want to feel that fin. And this part, you feel the fin more. It's just not with too much cant. You don't feel it here. You feel it here and here. I had rainbow fins make me a bunch of fins, and 1 degree, 4 degrees, 6 degrees, 8, 12 degrees, like this. And I went and tested them all in the same day. And when I wrote a 12-degree cant, I couldn't believe how it really brought home to me the cause effect of what cant does. These fins were like this, ridiculous. And wow, I really feel that. The advantage, the disadvantage, and the disadvantage way outweighed the advantages. And I brought it back down. I've had my fins in one degree inside, and that works, in my opinion, for better than if you were to go 7.5 degrees. Again, it's a style thing, and so you got to design the basic board for the majority, the 80th percentile. Then you got the extremists who like this, extremists who like that. Kevin Reed, one of my team riders years ago, and he was one of the first guy to do air. He was doing 5 feet, 6 feet of air I remember Rusty coming up to me, one of the contests we had at Huntington Beach, and he just got the Australian. Anyway, the goofy footer Australian, just riding his boards, and Kevin, he saw Kevin. He heard Kevin was doing air, and he came up and he goes, Bob, I heard he was doing air. I didn't believe it. I just out there. He was doing air here and there, popping these, popping over guys. I've never seen anything like it. He was blown away. Anyway, Kevin got off the tangent there. He rode twin fins, and he would take the fin that I recommended, cut it a quarter off of it, shave it off here, move it way up, and it would make it upset me. I go, that's not going to work. You need to go out there and rip the hell out of the wave, and because it's finesse. I remember seeing him drop it into a 15, 16-foot lane, dropping down. I go, all right, he's going to be sorry on this turn. And he would finesse a nice turn and just go up, and he'd pull it off with his style. Whereas I would have slid that thing out like that. Again, there's your style, and you got to dial yourself into who you are.
I definitely. Yeah, that's so true. I feel like, you know, are you front footed? Are you back footed? Are you pretty balanced? Are your toes right on the rail? Are you heavy? You know, are you more in the center? Like all those style of things. And I think even just surfing a board, if you don't get your board, you know, for example, coming to, you know, Northern California, when you got booties on from Hawaii or like Australia, like it's hard to feel your feet, right? You may stand up in the wrong spot on your board for like the whole first session and go, this board sucks, you know, but you may take it back to Hawaii and be able to put your feet where it normally goes. And you're like, oh, wow, this board's really good, you know, and I think that just goes to show, you know, like you got to have that mentality of being able to give boards a chance, change fins up. Just I think having an open mind is really cool. And then, look, there's nothing wrong with getting a board that works and sticking with it. And if you're doing really well on it, then, hey, that's fine as well. But some people, I feel like they just, they love feeling something different under their feet too, right? They feel like they're surfing differently, or now the challenge becomes a little bit more again, you know, and then they got to, you know, it gives them a challenge to work out. So, and I think big waves too. I think big wave guns and big wave boards with the fins, I think there's probably still a lot to be improved on, and a lot of stuff that's gonna, you know, I feel like we're gonna be able to go shorter and shorter with, you know, like the leaderage maybe spaced out where you're still paddling fast, but you got a shorter board, and you know, who knows where it's going to get. But I mean, it's changed dramatically from, you know, 20 years ago to now. I mean, what's in your mind? Because, you know, you've been out to Mavs a ton, and you've been around the world and seen big waves and seen big, you know, everyone surfing. Like, what is the biggest change? Number one, what's the biggest change in boards you think you've seen over the last, say, decade? You know, that's
let's take that back from the beginning. You know, that the three princes surfed here in Santa Cruz here in 1895 is the first anybody surfed up and down the coast, the West Coast, and they were riding 17 feet long polos, 6 inches thick, 240 pounds. We made replicas of the boards that they surfed. We found them in the Bishop Museum, and those boards were redwood, and they 240 pounds. Alcoa, which they would like better, that's twice that weight, 500 pounds. Then we got into balsa, and that's half the weight of redwood. So 240, now you got what, 120 pounds. Then we got polyurethane foam. That's half the weight of balsa. Then we got EPS, half the weight of EPS, expanded polystyrene, half the weight of polyurethane. And so there's been a progression to lighter. One of the biggest changes we've made, in my opinion, you know, there was a guy, what's his name? I can't remember. He rode twin fins in the 40s, I think, 40s, 50s, twin fins. Their board is out there. And the biggest progression is lighter. Lighter carries better, floats better, paddles faster, displaces less water, accelerates better, changes direction better because of inertia. Lighter, and that's performance. You know, and so you get into this, what's performance. So lighter it achieves that, whether it's a little short board, a medium-sized board, egg gun, hybrid, whatever, stand-up paddleboard, it's lighter. And biggest change is lighter. And we've been trying to keep the strength with it, so we've used it in some different materials, like S-glass, warp glass, direct size, integrity, carbon fibers, Kevlars, all that stuff. But the boards have got progressively weaker, more not one board for the lifetime, gotten weaker, and the future, I know right now that the materials, there's potential with graphene and stuff like that to make insanely light boards, insanely strong, and other materials and other foams and stuff like that. And that's the future. See how light can we go, and at what point is it the disadvantage that way the advantage? I think we can go significantly lighter for certain ways, certain days, certain people.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think look, I've been on the we've been working together for years now, and my boards. I mean, I love them. For the way that I surf and my style, but you also like you listen to me, because like this year I'm going back to you've just shaped me 3 PU boards because I was like, okay, I think at Jaws. I on certain days I may need I want to feel what it feels like to surf a PU again. I've been on epoxies for so long, right? So, and you're not like, Jamie, don't do it. No, you need to stay on this path. You're like, okay, let's do it. No worries, let's do it. What do you want to do? What do you want to change? You want to do this, that, and I think that's the beauty of having that relationship with a shaper is that because you tend to in times when you are having success. With anything, you're on that success train, and it's very hard to get off of it. It's just it's a one-way train until that's disaster sometimes, and then that's when you reset and you go, okay, now I don't want to go all the way back, but I have to let's find somewhere in the middle ground and start going back and changing. And I think that's a big thing with us too. Is like when we try and change things with my boards, is it's one thing at a time. It's not, let's just change 8 things and then work out, well, what was it that worked because we changed 8 little things. It's like, let's just change this one thing this time. And if we don't feel anything, then, okay, that's fine. Let's change the next thing the next time. And then a process of elimination, we'll find out what's working. And I've never had that before, so it's been awesome for me to be able to relate that to you. And then also, like I said, like this year I'm excited to get on the PU and see how that feels, and maybe I'll hate it, but at least in my mind I'll be like, you know what, I needed to try that, or I'll get the PU and make it get the epoxy and make it a little bit heavier than the last ones, or whatever it may be. But I think the conditions, like you say, that picture perfect day at Mavericks, it's got no wind and it's beautiful, and I think the light boards are can do it, and then there might be those days where it's a little onshore and it's a little lumpy, and you might be, I think I need something that's going to, be a little heavier, a little bit more drivey, and again, I think that's, look at the shortboard guys like Kelly and all that. They have epoxies for those days, and they have, they have PUs, they turn up the day, they look at what it is, and they make their decision, and I think that's where I'm trying to get to, is like, I got an epoxy with me and a PU. Like I can choose. I might surf one heat in the morning on the epoxy. Then I might, by the time, if you're lucky enough to make the final and it's windier and it's a little bit more out of control, you can change your board up.
You got to test properly. You got to be logical about it. You make subtle changes so you know where the improvements, the positive and negative are coming from, and you get a thought, you get an idea. Don't just talk about it. Make a board, go write it. Solve that. You've got a question. Solve that question. You solve that question. Now you can progress to the next. If it's positive, you follow that in that direction. If it's negative, you learn. Okay, go to the next. And a variety of conditions dictate a variety of different boards. And polyurethane. I was one of the first guys to use ultralight out of Clark foam, and I used a lot of it. And people are going, that falls apart too quick, and it did. But I made insanely light boards in '76. Insanely light. I had the lightest boards on the pro circuit back then. They're just nothing. If I got eliminated, the other guys wanted to borrow my boards. And today they're making even lighter polyurethane and lighter polyurethane to try to solve the weight problem in regards to the EPS, the differential there. And polyurethane gives you a little different flex, and that flex dictates a cause effect. Is that good or bad? All depends on you, who you are, what waves you're riding, you know, and there it is. So you need a quiver of boards, a quiver of fins. You got to test properly, ride everything, and you've got your whole package ready to go. Okay, if the waves do this, I'm riding. If the waves do this, I'm riding. If the waves do this, I'm riding that. You know, and there it is.
Yeah, I mean, it was like you remember. This is a funny story. So when the first year we had the Nazare contest, the first contest, I was already in. I was with Twiggy, and we were in Spain, and we were surfing a swell there. And then while we were already there, the swell for the contest that eventually got caught on started looking great. And I realized that I'd had boards, but not the one. So I called up a friend, and we had I think I had a brand new 10.6, the green and yellow brand new 10.6. She'd shaped me, and so Matt Rott, thanks Matt. He picked the board up in Hawaii, and he flew over, and basically I woke up that morning and just, you know, picked it up. You know, it was a giant day that day. I picked it up, felt it, and went, yep, this feels good, looks good. I'm going to use this board. Never used it before. But, you know, that goes to the fact that, like, most of our boards, we've designed them so I can take them anywhere around the world and surf them and feel comfortable, you know. But at that day, before that moment, I'd been riding quads a lot, you know, like everyone, you know, been using quads. And for some reason that day, I just looked at the conditions, and I was just like, you know what? I want some control. I want some control today, because I'm going backside as well, you know, big backside into the wind. So I used the Futures Twiggy fins that day, the Twiggy thruster, and man, they worked insane. You know what I mean? Like, they worked insane. And maybe if I'd chosen a quad set that day, maybe things had gone a little different. You know, who knows? Or maybe it would have went better. But I think that's just that gut instinct, and like you say, knowing I'm by far I'm no expert on equipment or fins, but I definitely think you are.
You're amazing now. You know, that night before that contest, we talked on the phone. Yeah. And we discussed what board, and you got the board. It was late. You finally got it, and what fins you're going to ride. And we talked about Nazare, how big it was going to be, how the water is always moving there, how control is a good thing. And I remember you going, control is a good thing. I'm going to ride the thruster tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's where the different fins come in.
Yeah, for sure. And having
more control.
And having the boards too, you know, most of my boards are set up to have the quad and the thruster, you know, so there in itself there's a specific way to change your board up just by, you know, using a set of fins. And then on top of that, if you've got different sets of fins on those fins, you can still, you know, so there's a chance there that you can make a one board feel different in about 5 different ways, you know. But unless you know, and unless you test it, unless you constantly do that, you don't know, you know. But you've got to be diligent in doing the testing.
So many customers come and I go, what fin do you want? Oh, I want a tri-fin. And I go, okay. And they look at me and ask, you that cool? And I went, well, why not a quad? Well, I think I like this better. And I go, okay, your key word there is you think, you're not sure. And so if you're not sure, why not get the option so you can ride it as a tri or a quad? And they look at me, and most guys go, great idea. Then I'll learn, I'll get it off, and I can change it up. And it doesn't hurt your performance of the board, that little extra box or two. It's nothing. So a lot of the boards we make today have the options of riding them and moving your fins around and trying different things. Yeah,
it's awesome. I mean, for me personally, I think that, you know, if we're looking at board design, what's next in the future to make things take it to the next level, you got to think that the world that we live in, it's construction, it's the materials. What are those materials going to be like? You know, can you make something, like you say, super light that's super strong? Because obviously, you know, having light boards is awesome, but if you're breaking them all the time, it's not cost effective either, right? So you know, you've got to, there's a fine line, but I think that we live in a world where materials, and we have innovators, and it gets so crazy so fast that these new materials come out that I think that that's probably the next big thing is like making boards that with materials that we've never used before, and foils of fins, and do we go smaller fins? Is it bigger fins, smaller fins in the front, bigger fins in the back? There's all just it's just the world's really, it's still open. Big wave surfing is still so young, and you got so many talented kids, and the way they're approaching the wave, and the left at Mavericks, backdoor on the left at Mavericks on shorter boards and all that sort of stuff. It's super exciting to see, like, in the next 2 to 3 years, even like to what I've been riding, specifically how that's potentially gonna change, So it's exciting times.
It is exciting times. A big change that I see is back when I first started surfing, there was on a longboard, and as I said, I started going down to a shortboard, 8.6, and my surfing buddies really didn't like it. They didn't like to see me deviating from the norm. What are you doing? What are you riding that thing for? And so when everybody got onto shortboards, it wasn't cool to longboard, and then it wasn't cool to do this. There was snow skiing. It's not cool to snowboard, and all of a sudden everyone's going, "Hey, snowboarding in front of the helmet," and everybody started snowboarding. You go in the water today, and everybody's doing everything, and that's such a change. You paddle out there, guys are on shortboards, guys are on little wood boards, guys are on buoy boards, and medium-sized boards, eggs, hybrids, guns, stand-up paddle boards. Guys are proning across the lake. Guys are on sailboards and kite surfing and foil boards. And I look at today and I go, man, there's a lot of people out in the water having fun on all these toys out there doing what they want to do. And I think people are more open-minded now, and that opens it up. Some guy gets his foil board, starts doing this. His kite board starts doing this. And they go, hey, I want to take some of this design, lay it over into this, lay it over into this. And so there's a lot of, I shape everything, the prone paddle boards. I've been doing that for years and everything. And that's taught me a lot about design, how to incorporate from this, and that. And everybody's out there for fun. And before, when I started, there was very few women. I remember there's only 2 women surfing. Now women are everywhere, and it's great.
Yeah.
Age, real young, real old. It's opened up.
It's awesome. And I think that's a great point you made about the paddleboarding too. And I think another shaper is Chris Christensen, that shapes boards for Greg and for Ian. He's a paddleboarder. I love his paddling. I've done a bunch of races. I've paddled with him, and he has put a lot of his knowledge from paddleboarding into the big wave guns. Because if you really look at it, catching the swells on a 12-foot board, there's probably more relatable information from that than surfing 6-foot or 5'10" in a 1-foot wave. So and he made a really interesting board for Ian Walsh this past year. Real crazy looking board, but it worked, and I think that's a great thing is, again, having the open mind of, like you said, you've shaped everything. You've shaped me paddle boards. I got one of your 12 footers out here, and and I think that there's a big correlation to obviously bigger boards to the big guns that we're riding as well.
Because I'm open-minded, because I've shaped so many different variety of boards, it's really improved my skill of shaping and my knowledge of design and how to apply it to different individuals and different conditions and stuff. It's so valuable.
Yeah, you got to think that even the foil. I've been foiling a lot this summer and downwinding, and I started off on I've got these the guys from Lift hooked me up, and so they gave me what they call the surf wings, which are more, for what it says in the surf, you're not going too fast. I had like what they call a 200, and it's a thicker foil, and I was going downwinding on it, and it was good, but I was not connecting really well, and then I got this high aspect wing, and game changer. Like, I mean, not even in the same stratosphere. I just jumped on this board, and you're like, holy shit! I'm doing a new sport just from same shaft, same board, different front wing, different back wing, and I don't even know. It's like driving a Ferrari and driving an old Volkswagen. It's crazy. And I think that even the foils, I think there's going to be people taking information, and I think probably Kyle Lenny's already doing it for sure, but taking the information from the foils and then putting them somehow into big wave board, maybe more the fins maybe than the board, but it's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. You had a different toy out in the different conditions, and one worked way better. The toy, you know, and also now you got a bigger grin on your face, or you're enjoying it more. That's the whole design thing, you know. I worked with Laird Hamilton for years, and we put a lot of energy to design and improving this and doing that, and the passion. And he was riding foils, and I was watching riding foils, and he was doing different things like that, and how this one worked here, that one worked there. And you put it all together as basic hydrodynamics. How does it work? How do you get more speed? Here you need more speed. Here you need more lift. Here you want to turn better. All right, for this condition, it's all about improving the design, getting a better board, you know?
Yeah, it's awesome, man. It's so cool. And well, thanks, Bob. Hey, I really appreciate it because, you know, I've had a lot of mainly just surfers on here, and I really wanted to get a shaper on here and talk design and talk story, and for all these other shapers out there, I'll be getting you guys on too, not too distant future, but I really appreciate it, Bob, and thanks for all your insight and knowledge, and what a cool history growing up in Santa Cruz, and still to this day, hey, anyone that's been to Santa Cruz knows that Pearson Arrow logo. It's freaking everywhere. It's like the mafia. it's the Arrow mafia in Santa Cruz. But hey, while we can, give a shout out. If anyone's looking for a board in Santa Cruz, it's big wave season, guys. If you're looking for big wave yarns, how do we get in contact with Bob Pearson and get a board?
Arrow surfboards, Arrow Surfing Sport at the factory. Arrow, just great. Jamie, I love working with you. I love your passion. You know, one of the reasons I got into this whole thing is just I love it. And when you get someone else who loves it, and the passion, the excitement is contagious. Next thing you're having such a good time, whether it's designing a board, surfing, or hanging out, talking about it. You know, and that's what it's all about. So, thank you.
Well, I'll be at your house pretty soon, picking up my quiver for this year. So, wait for a knock on the door.
Right on, Jamie.
All right, thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.